That being said, I'd like to invite Prime Minister to open up the round for all of us. Here,
Am I audible?
you are, yeah.
Okay. My speech was starting. 3, 2, 1, go. So some characterizations about the social shame, and second, my own argument from the opening government. So let's come to the characterization part. Is that so? What does social shame looks like? Is that is something that very subjective and made by others, right? And compared to something very objective, is not a social. It's the laws or something, etc. Is something that very objective, right? So actually, the social shame is actually something very like subjective and made by others, and you cannot just recognize whether it's wrong or right or something, etc. Right? But if in our world the individuals are just like don't care about the social shame, is that which means that we don't care about others negative feedback from the others, right? So actually in our house, two main cases is that number one is is about the minority people. So our house believe that it's better for the protection of the minority people. So what does this minority people looks like in our set of in our set of world? They will be more confident. So why so? Number one mechanism is that the characterization is that in the opposition side, they are the marginalized people, right? So actually they also like experiencing like refused by others or criticized by others or just like experiencing some discrimination or something, etc. Right? So actually they are the real victims of the social shame. Like for example, if you are the LGBT group and if you are a man and you just like the other man, you just like receive the social shame from the others, and others will make some very bad comments on you, right? And if you're just like a woman and you are in a period and also just like recognized by others or by the outside world, is a shame, right? So actually for those minority people in the society who are not fit in the mainstream, they are actually the victims of the social shame. They're also they are just like they're the actual victims that who are suffering those so-called discrimination, right? So actually the impact in our side is very simple. Number one, if we just like don't care about those negative feedbacks from the others, and we don't just like feel the social shame, the number one impact is that we will just like reduce our mental trauma in this society, because we just like don't care about what you are saying, right? I don't care what you just like say about me, right? So actually in our side of the world, those minority people would be more confident than the opposition side, right? They have the power to be themselves and just like show themselves, right?
Sure.
And the deeper impact is more just like it's more manifest is that they will have more like the group of the minority people would be more stronger, because they have the confidence to just like show their voice, to be seen by more people, or to be understood by more people, right? So actually in this status quo, we have the more chance to just like grab the middle ground people's attention, right? So actually in this status quo, we have the potential power to just let this group be more stronger and let the outside world just like sing about us. So actually in our side war, it's more possible for the protection laws for those minority for this minority people to be made, because we have the stronger group, right? Because we just like have the confidence to just like stand for us and just like see out what we are thinking about, right? And number two argument is very it's about self-development. In our self-house, we think individuals can gain better self-development. Number one mechanism is that because we have the confidence or we have the power to just like try more things, where we have more chance, right? So actually this there are some characterization about humans. So actually humans are just like are the animals who are just like live together, right? We tend to live together, and we tend to be fit to the mainstream, right? So actually if just like once very small number of people, they just like say something new or they discover something new, but it's just like disobey with the mainstream, and they will just like hate themselves or hate their idea because it's not fit with the mainstream, right? So actually because they're the social animal that want to live with together, want others just like feedback, want others good feedback, right? So actually in our house, we don't care about this. So actually if we just like discover something new, or just like we found something new that not that disobey with the mainstream, we have the power or we have the confidence to see those like to see out those new ideas, or to see out these new concepts, right? We are not, because we're not caring about the others feedback, right? So we have the chance to try more, we have the chance to just like try different diverse things or something, etc. Number one mechanism is about the self-development is that the error, the mistake tolerance rate in our self-world world is more just like it's more high, because actually in the opposition world, if we just make mistakes, it's actually in very high possibility that is discriminated by others, or just like receive criticism from the outside world, right? So in our self-house, because we don't care about those criticism, or we don't care about those errors, we don't care about this like criticism from the outside world. So actually in our self-house, the error tolerance rate is very high, it's higher compared to the opposition side, right? Then the impact is very simple. Number one is the mental health issues, because like we don't care about others, we just like can be ourselves in very happy way, right? If we just want to do something, and we can do something, right? And number two is that more chances will be brought in our self-house, because we have more chance to just like experience diverse things. We don't care about who the other people just like judge those diverse things we are experiencing, right? So actually we can gain more, we have more chance to experience different things, where we have like more broad horizons or something, etc., right? And number three is about creativity and critical thinking. Just as what I said before, we have the power, or we have the confidence to see out something that is disobeyed from the mainstream, right? So actually we are just like some people that have those critical thinking, or have the confidence to do something that disobey with the mainstream, right? And compared to the opposition side, I know opposition side will say that, okay, they can gain the reflection from the outside world, so actually we can be a better person, but that is not true. Number one is that there are many comments, or like it's many comments come from the outside world, and what their quality or their quantity is very, very large, right? And their quality can be not guaranteed. So it's very hard for just like individuals to recognize whether this comment is wrong or right? Because the quantity is so large. Number two is that it will just like let others just like hear about those very negative feelings, and just like let you let you just like trump in a very just like self-consumption this situation, right? And in this case, you're just like very it's very high possible for you just like cannot be the real yourself, and just like you want to feed others, you want to feed the mainstream, and you are really care about other people's comments. And in this state core, you are more likely to just like be a person that not like the real self, right? You are most likely to be the other person, to be the person who are the perfect in other people's eyes, right? So in this case, you are very likely to be manipulation, or to be manipulated by the outside world. Like you are just like say something that is good in the social media, and you want to be the person like this social media, you are very likely to be manipulated. But in our self world, a person cannot be manipulated in very easy way. Thank you. Yes, that's all.
All right, thanks, Vika, for that speech. To open up the op bench, I'd like to invite Leader Bob.
Yep. Now I'm setting on my microphone, my computer. So, okay, I'm audible.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll start my speech. So by the way, if you have a few words, please vocalize. Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Anyway, I will pose for this motion. The first three are the bottle for the previous speaker said. This is that the first three, and like some minority groups like the LGBTQ people have more likely to have the confidence, but this is not true, right? And so first three, probably in these people actually get the more advocates from the other people, and so this relates to the confidence. That is a very clear stuff, right? And even if probably they have some of the bad comments, even some of the bad comments that even if we consider the best case of the scenario, actually in the current world, especially in the many countries, actually some of the LGBTQ and the minority bills and the way they allowed in the diet, and so these kind of stuff, the narratives will be spread all over the world. So therefore, in the long term, probably this kind of the confidence will be much more positive, right? And plus, in our paradigm, probably even and if well. probably actually everyone has a narrative that we should respect some of the LGBTQ and the other kind of the minority groups, and when some of the people actually try to belittle these kind of the minority group, probably the social shame works well, and so probably they will be feel embarrassed and from any other people, and so that's why they do not do that. So that's why rather than in their paradigm, probably in our paradigm that it's much more spare, right? Second, probably they like and even some also he explained about the cases of making more mistakes, but probably the I response in as well, right? And the first three, and like in the case of get the many bad comments in the first three is a very, very rare case. And secondly, and in less than in your paradigm, probably less than in your paradigm, and in your paradigm probably, and when some of the people actually, when some of the people try to make a found some of the mistakes, probably, well, some of the shame and the social shame works well as well, and so they do not, as they feel embarrassed and do not. And they less likely to do that bad things, right? Next, let's move to argumentation. I have 3 layers, and the first three, how the people internalize this kind of social shame, and the second three, why the product bad, and the last three are the third three, why our product is good, and last three are influences. By the way, I do the setup. Well, in the world, probably between some of the people, between the bad things and the people and who want to criticize and to someone, and also some of the bad stuff, but and the people do not usually criticize, and these kind of between and the people between the bad things, bad actions, and that people who want to criticize and the people do not people is some of the very, very good actions, and actually there are many kinds of the bad things that people who want to criticize, but they do not do that, right? And so like for example, some of the people actually they're cutting in the line and say that no, thank you, and making a loud voices and watch a loud voices when watching the movie, etc. Right? Next, I explained how the people internalize these kind of social norms. Well, probably some of the parents and the very, very kind of friends will convey you when in your childhood, and when you do some of the brothers son, probably they actually say no, you should know that, and they realize that this kind of stuff is a social shame, and this is a wrong stuff, right? Next, let's move to next I explain why the plan is bad. The first three, probably the more the people actually invade the loose, and so invade the loose, right? And because actually, like even in the parliament, probably even and they do the wrongdoings about probably wrongdoings, but probably everyone do not criticize, and even if they do even want to criticize some, right? And so that's why in these kind of situations, and these kind of people who do the wrongdoings actually do not realize the current legal situation, right? And so as the situation goes, probably some of the little bit bad actions will be piled up, and so that's why some of the uncomfortable and the feelings will be also the part of in their point, right? Second, and also, some of the more people actually are less likely to cooperate with each other, right? That because in their paradigm they are more likely to do the actions which is useful for them. So that's why everyone cannot control with each other, and so they be forced into the vicious cycle, and in the end, the world will be chaos, right? I give you the 2 examples, and the first three, and so when you have some. And when you make the bad voices in the park at midnight, probably like some of these kind of voices will make some other neighbor people actually feel uncomfortable, and so they feel like they're invading some of their interest, and the bad they do not criticize them at all, and if they want to do the criticize, so that's why these kind of situations will be worse, and so in the worst cases, probably some of the parks will be abolished because and in the directory, probably some of the listeners will criticize some to these kinds of some of the local governments, and so that's why probably these kinds of local facilities and the services, etc., will be abolished and shrinking, right? Second, and in the case of the businesses, like in the case of businesses, like some of the everyone will more likely to be late for the meetings and etc. So that's why probably some of the productivity will be lower and lower and lower compared to the finance, right? And so due to this Sorry. And next, I explain why our problem is good. And the first thing, probably everyone will be more likely to obey the rules, right? So even if they do that, even if they do the wrongdoings, they'll probably do well as some of the social shame works well, and so they will realize that this will lead to this is the wrongdoings and even say some people, everyone that no one that criticizes these kind of actions, probably they will realize by themselves, and so that's why this will lead to the maintenance of some of the public safety and etc. Right, and second, well, so due to that, probably some of the more every type of systems of public services and the faculties, etc., will be maintained under better conditions, and so that's why probably everyone will be utilize these kind of services in a very comfortably, and so that's why probably overall well-being is much more better than compared to the partner, right? So Next, and finally, I explain the importance. Well, this kind of social shame actually works well in order to maintain some of the cooperation in the paradigm, and so this will lead to some of the some of the overall well-beings and depends on these kind of some of the maintenance in the society, right? So that's why this kind of stuff having some of the social shame is nothing but very important stuff. So for these reasons, we back to Bruce. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Speaker, for that speech. To further the Gov bench, I'd like to invite TPM. Here.
Yep. Am I audible?
You are, yeah.
Hey. I suppose just directly open the mic and speak to me if you have any POI, and I will take one from the opening.
Yeah, you take the one from the closing.
Yeah, closing is also okay if you have one. Speech starts. 3, 2, 1. Firstly, why people feel social shame? Because basically human beings are social animals. Like naturally, when they feel not belonging, when they feel feeling alienated from the other teams or peers, they feel shame. Basically, in the world, what we prefer at the very beginnings without shame, like totally shames are based on internal feelings that you feel yourself is like isolated from others. You feel you'll be feeling internally bad, but it's different, like totally different from guilty. Like guilty basically because like external powers that impose on you, basically because like you are actually go into a crime, you're hurting others, you steal others' things, and basically like judges will kind of punish you, like giving you some punishment, thus, and it's still in a world without like social shame, you still feeling other bad things. We're not supposed to world erasing other bad feeling. For example, you still feel hurted, you still feel regret, you still feel guilty, you still feel sympathy towards others. Thus, I do not think at the beginnings, all the argumentation given by LO exists at the very first place. Basically, they talk about like, oh, like when only people like criticize on others on their bad things. I don't think it's totally true, because basically, like especially in a world where social media are so popular, people just basically like, I feel this girl is not so pretty, even though like other things is pretty. I can still comments on bad things on her, because basically like human beings believe in their own feelings. Human beings have so many standards of evaluations. Human beings varies from each other. So thus, I do not think criticize comes from a very objective way, just like what a leader of opposition trying to presume. Number 2, like they basically talks about due to the fact that people only feel bad, people will feel bad basically because they do bad things. Thus, they think there will be like rules to strict on the others. There will be like more serious rules to control those bad feelings. I do not think so. The things only happen to our sides. I will talk into in my second extensions. Yeah, basically moving on. Talking about still like those bad feelings, for example, guilty, for example, regrets, sympathies cannot be erased in the very first place. Thus, in our sort of house, we take it like lot of advantage. Basically, number one, we can mostly protect the marginalized group. Firstly, why marginalized groups are so easy, are the biggest victim of social biggest victim of social shames. Basically, at the very first place, people are easier to feel social shames, like based on on this marginalized group, because like when they grow up, they feel alienated. But as a contrast, like for example, rich kids will last feeling like social shame because like they're living in quite good environments. Everyone admire them, like they're in super good conditions. But as a contrast, girls, especially like when they're growing up, like boys will discriminate or laughing at them because they have parents. Like LGBT group, they feel marginalized because like when they grow up, like their classmates, their peers will laugh at them because basically they're different from them. Thus, like social harms mostly taken place in those marginalized groups. But in our sort of book, we can easily erase the harms, no matter it's like tangible harms. Like for example, people will more easily to take bullies on those marginalized groups, or like psychologically, there will feel huge mental traumas at the first place. This is our impact one. I do think it's the most important impact in today's debates, and thus let's go into the second mechanism towards that. Like in a world, yes, I will take that.
Okay, back to your majority point, right? If no one ever feels shame for example, saying or doing anything harmful towards the minority, then what stops those confident majority groups from targeting the minority even more?
Like basically, like why social shames happens on minority at the very first place, because like basically they are different from others, right? Thus, like people feel when people feel alienated, they will do bad things, or those somebody's different from them. Like when people feel isolated, they feel shamed because basically everyone wants to feel belongings, right? Thus, I do think the social shame most taken place on minority groups. Yes, moving on to my mechanism two. Even if like in the ops world, when a world with social shame, it will be different from each other's. Like basically, social shame's functions is super vague. Like social shame only taken place based on the understanding of like social morality. Like if a super evil criminals, like he's doing something bad, and others are actually criticizing him on them. But based on the premise, if he don't knows or he feel nothing about shames, like he because like he don't care about those social those social morality. Even in the world with social shames, like based on there will be different standards of how people feeling on social shames. There will still like that takes very limited functions on those groups of people. Yeah, sorry. Number three, I do think, especially in a world when social medias are going so popular, I do think in our sort of house, we can mostly like erase those cyberbullying that will very likely to harm those no matter it's average groups or especially minority groups. Yeah, this is our argument one. And moving on, I do think it's in a world without social harms can mostly push into creativities or critical thinking toward individuals. Thus, because like extension will be looks like it will be easier for those people from lower classes to actually climb up the social ladders, because basically there will be invisible barriers between rich kids and poor kids in the classrooms, and how they actually taken place in reality world. They would just like divide it into invisible groups, and just feeling when feeling shamed, those poor kids, it's so hard to even like join those groups. But in a world without social shames, those kids will be empowered with more courage, thus will be motivating them to actually taking some actions, and thus to push them to climb the social ladders at the very first place. I do think the time's up.
All right, thanks, speaker, for that speech. To further the bench and wrap up the opening, I invite the other.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, your article.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my gender preferences show her and please vocalize PY. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. First of all, I like to revert to the opening government argumentation. They have two argumentation. First, they say that minority people will be protected from the social shame, but we have three responses here. Firstly, the impactation is quite marginal because if minority people don't care about care about being criticized, the social barrier doesn't change in this world. We cannot remove discrimination completely in this world. For example, if you are LGBTQ and try to rent an apartment with your partner, and then your landlady might say that, oh, we don't accept LGBTQ couple. This kind of direct discrimination will happen anyway. And in this situation, like this kind of direct social barrier, the people will feel the mental harm anyway, right? So that is why their impact is marginal. Number two, it is untrue. They misunderstand the nuance of the social chain. It is like people feel ashamed about their action or appearance before they do the action. For example, if you want to throw away your plastic bottle to your road, you will hesitate to do that, right? And their characterization of minority is like poor people or LGBTQ people, but we cannot recognize them as a minority just by seeing appearance, right? So it's super unlikely that they are directly criticized face to face when they walk the road, right? And actually, when they face the social stigma, it's like on the social media, they see the tweet of which discriminates this kind of social minority people. But this kind of situation will not be is symmetric to both sides. That is why their argumentation doesn't suit this debate, like this debate of the social shame nuance. Number three, their solution is like minority people will not care about criticism, so they will be saved. But it's really a negative solution, right? Rather, we should prioritize to create an inclusive society where minority people are not treated as social bonobos. Because without creating this inclusive society, people will face discrimination anyway. Okay. Secondly, they talked about people will not feel ashamed when they fail something. But I like to flip this argumentation. Feeling ashamed is a super big incentive for people to be successful. Actually, people always have two types of motivation. First is a positive motivation, and the second is a negative motivation. But actually, people's first priority is instinct priority is like keep their social status or keep their social popularity or reputation, right? So that is why this negative motivation, it does much more work well than positive motivation. Like for example, when I take the examination of Turkey University, I really care about if I fail on the examination, some people are laughing at me. Like this kind of negative motivation does more work. Sure, no, thank you. Next, I like the construct argument. They say they live up to our argument, like people will keep rules because they will be criticized on the social media. But like we talked about the more smaller case of the social moral. For example, when others cut in a long line when you are waiting for a restaurant, you will feel so bad, right? But it's not illegal, so you don't have to criticize about themselves, right, on the social media. This kind of smaller life. Based on the living everyday daily stressful things will be accumulated in their side of the house. This will devastate the people's quality of life. Okay. Next, I'd like to extend my argumentation. What's the impactation of if people don't care about the social shame? We have mainly an impact. People don't care about the moral and social manner and prioritize themselves. I have two analyses here. People don't care about their appearance. For example, people don't take baths and they might be smell badly. Or your shirt is sticking out of your suit, but you don't care about. If you're sloppy or you don't care about. but it connects to the other people's bad feeling. For example, your customers will lose the trust against your company because you're like sloppy person. Even if it's your own appearance, it damages the trust of your community you belong to, right? Like company or schools or so on. B, people don't care about breaking the public rules. This breaking public rules is not illegal, but it harms other people's feeling. For example, imagine you go to watch movies with your friends, but the people sitting next to you are always laughing loudly and speak loudly when watching movies. You feel so bad, right? So in their paradigm, people have a difficulty doing the action with action of the mass action in the group or community, right? They will prioritize themselves and they'll have difficulty. They'll be independent and they will be selfish person and they prioritize themselves. It devastates the community or group.
UI?
It connects to declining the productivity of the company and yeah, like that. Okay. Nextly, finally, I like to weighing this debate. Their argumentation is like saving minority and giving confidence to minorities, but versus fear focusing on losing moralities and societal impact. That we are weighing in the two metrics here. First is a uniqueness, and second is a scale of the impact. Like, first of all, the uniqueness. They're talking about do you have much more alternatives to make minorities confident? Like, for example, if minority people don't see their social media and don't care about try to not care about their criticism, it might be work well. We have to prioritize to create a more inclusive society rather than changing the minority themselves. But our argumentation is very, very unique because we have my example and more mechanization. Like people don't care about the appearance, or people cannot cannot act in the community, right? And secondly is the impactation. We focus on the much more scale, and we focus on every person living in the society and living in the community. Humans are animals who live with the people. That is why we strongly oppose the motion. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Speaker, for that speech. To open up the closing half, I'd like to invite a member of God.
Am I audible?
You are, yeah.
Okay. Sure. For POIs, please vocalize. And for my gender pronouns, please call me she or her. All right, sure. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the problem of opening government is that they try to say that minority will be saved in our counterfactual because they don't care about social shame anymore. But saying that they don't care will not will not prove why this minority will be specifically and uniquely saved in our counterfactual. So it's important for us to prove that how they do not care about social opinion. So I'll be the one who is going to prove that. There's two things in my speech. Firstly, I'll do the framing of our counterfactuals. Secondly, I'll say that why minority will be specifically uniquely saved in our counterfactual world. Okay, moving on with the characterization of our counterfactual. I think there's 2 points to this. Firstly, I think you will judge from pure good or bad inside your mind and follow your mind and heart's on what is right or wrong, which means that when you say what is right, it's these kind of senses of right is grown and taught by parents, education, and personal experience. It's like kind of like the rule of God inside your mindset, which includes like law, the societal law mindset and culture that will lead you to grow as a person and moralistic person. In contrast to that, what is wrong in these kind of our counterfactual is the betrayal to the accumulation of the right thing that you have been taught or learned, which also means that you're obviously going against the rule of God inside your mind, rule of God who knows the moral inside, like throughout your whole life experience. In contrast to that, I think social shame, the wrong is decided in the social shame dependent on the opinion by others, and I think this thoroughly dependent on the proximity of others and perception of others. Secondly, I think that the social opinion is not really influential to people. The social opinion is not like the guidelines that people will follow, but you will decide this. And I will say uniquely from our closing government would say why this is important. Why this is important. So this is important because not all social shame is legitimate and correct. Why this is the case? There are three reasons why. Firstly, about history. Narrative of what is societally shameful is established gradually through the history for long times. It takes time to form these kind of narrative throughout society that would be decided as a social shame. So which means that in past there were illegitimate discrimination towards minority people. That is something that will not be erased magically on the opposition side, because even though they try to say that social shame is something that would make people do the right thing. Yes, I'll take your PY.
Okay, so you said those like you will still judge the right or wrong based on like education and social expectations, right? But isn't shame just the emotional reaction to failing those, right? So if those expectations still exist in your world, then you can't say shame doesn't exist anymore, right?
Okay, I think the concept is it's about social shame, which means that the context of shame is decided by the societal value. And I'm saying that these values are not always right because of the history that is underlying here. And I think there's illegitimate discrimination happening on. These kind of things do not erase easily in opposition side. Secondly, about irrationality of the society, I think in society it's more easy for extreme opinion to spread. That's simply because it's easier to gather more attention and reaction if the context is more extreme. And I think this is reason why it's kind of like further likely for people to kind of radicalize their own opinion. And thirdly, I think there will be ignorance of society. Society is incapable of knowing like every cases, every human being, the existence and like personal background of every human being, which means that especially about like minority, I think that discrimination is happening because of the ignorance of society, and I think society is kind of like incapable of catching up with the all personal background that they should know. So then the implication here is that according to your action with social shame, doesn't mean you're going to do something that is really right and societally worth. Okay, moving on with my second argument, which is to prove why minority will be specifically uniquely saved in our counterfactual world. Okay, there's first one point to this because their inner voice is simply stronger. Those who try to exploit them, manipulate them, criticize you will still exist in our side anyway. And it's more likely, but what we're saying that it's more likely to not be swayed by these opinion because of three reasons. A, I think it's more scary for them to betray their will. Why this is the case? In a world where you don't focus on social shame, everything that decides your future is your moral value or your will. If you listen to others and twist your moral, then that means you no longer believe yourself, which means that you no longer have guidelines for your life. Which means also shaking your existence itself. So because that fear is really stronger than simply not going along with people who try to destroy you under the name of social justice, I think it's more you would prioritize to listen to your moral value because that is the guideline that you have throughout your whole life, which is just really valuable. Secondly, B, I think there is an invaluableness of the moral principles that they have inside. Going against your moral means you're basically going against the rule of God in your mind and the rule of nature in your world. It's only natural for people to believe this kind of will other than other people who you don't know anything about and who you're trying to exploit you for no reason and no rational reasons. See, and I think there will also be like accumulated confidence because if you choose to go along with your choices throughout your entire life, it's more likely for you to experience a positive outcome through your like will and through your choices. For example, if you're trying to work as if you're a woman and if you're trying to pursue a career and you used to do that and you become like the leaders of the company later, then that would be the accumulated confidence of you, because you're choosing to become pursuing academic, or you choosing to pursue career made you to successful person. And these kind of opportunities more likely on the side, which means the accumulated confidence would let them to feel more confident in their self decision. So the impact here is one, I think on daily level, there will be salvation. About environment, I think because it's easier to say what you think because you're not trying to be normal person anymore, you're more likely to find person who agrees with you. Your chances to have discussion with a person with different opinion, which would further develop your sense of moral, which means that you could get along with person who don't try to oppress you irrationally. And I think you have more courage to choose environment where you think you deserve to. For example, if the harassment is going on your workplace, even though if you're not the target, you would follow your moral that harassment is something that should not happen, and don't care about whether they will be criticized as a coward who easily escape from working place. And I think because these social shame do not be forced on our side of the house, I think they're more likely to choose the environment that they want to lead. And B, I think there will be also personal success because you're more easily likely to step into your way. For example, like if you want to pursue your career, then I think you can do that. And by the chances of listening to your voice and listening to your voice will and following your action after that would simply leads you to have more opportunity to challenge, which means that you're more likely to success in our side of the house. So proud to propose.
All right, thanks, Speaker, for that speech. To open up the closing half of up, I invite Member of up.
Just to confirm, am I audible?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Verbal PLIs, feel free to interrupt me. My time starts in 3, 2, 1. First, refuting ideas coming out of government as a whole, then onto our principled extension, vertical extension, onto why overall, principally it is wrong to not have same in the first place. Going on to first the ideas coming out of government, I think generally they say the idea that basically minorities are being empowered under their side of the world, minorities are less likely to oppress them in the first place, etc. I think the same idea comes out of opening and closing, it's just they explain it differently. Let's first respond to this. I think that firstly, removing the whole idea of saying basically removes the whole point of social reputation against the whole idea, social checks and balances against oppression in the first place, i.e. the idea that minorities are currently freed from saying about their own identity probably also removes sayings from people who probably oppress them in the first place. This is for example, majorities now getting a better excuse to actually target minorities because they no longer feel the internal shame that they do feel previously under our status quo about when they're actually feeling bad for maybe harming a person physically, harming another mentally, etc. I think this means that under their side of the world, the amount of physical harm that actually happens to minorities significantly increase, because that basically means that majorities no longer feel any shame about maybe inflicting harm in the first place. Maybe in our current status quo, they probably still feel some amount of disgust against maybe trying to inflict harm on somebody physically, and they probably try and direct that harm online. I think, however, within the current role, the majorities are less likely to feel any form of shame about their own activities, which probably means that they'll probably either increase the extent of their own harm or increase the overall impact of it to the extent that they'll probably harm minorities physically. I think that at the end of the day, they actually increase the negative impacts onto minorities. Now onto our principled extension, onto how shame is a moral end in the society. Basically, not having shame violates people's rights by infringing on their dignity and autonomy. We have 3 parts to this. First, characterizing what shame is. Second, understanding how this basically leads to why is this principally and morally wrong. And third, onto why this is true. First, onto what shame actually looks like. I think this is missing within the opening government, in the sense they don't actually characterize what shame looks like on a personal level and how people are likely to internalize it. We tell you 3 things. 1, shame is basically the overall emotional awareness that you have violated social expectations and you probably care about how others view their own actions. This means that shame itself mostly operates internally, i.e. people are often to use it as a more self-regulating mechanism to think about their own actions and words. Second, shame itself normally correlates to a sense of what is good and what is bad, as people are generally conditioned from birth to adhere to more shared basic moral standard. For example, killing people is bad, helping someone is good, etc. Shame is therefore when people's actions clash with these internal beliefs, leading them to feel bad, or for example, embarrassed or multiple about something. This means that the majority of self-internalized shame is good to some extent because it regulates you to act in a morally good way. serve. As a result, shame is the prerequisite to all other forms, or basically the precedent to all other forms of negative motivations. Things like, for example, guilt or remorse that government tries to claim exist, as shame is a cause of future reflections on why you made a terrible life choice. I think that as a result, government cannot claim that they still have some form of like external or internal regulation under their side of the world, considering that shame is a literal reason why these things even exist in the first place. Without shame, you cannot claim any of these benefits. Therefore, why is a lack of shame principally and morally wrong? Shame itself internally brings responsibility. The whole point of shame is a concept that I value a claim that I claim to hold. It happens with discomfort about when you're acting contradict with your own standards. It is intrinsically tied to being seen, being judged, and being trusted. Under the status quo, feeling shame is tied to your inner identity about being maybe a more pious person when the majority want to feel good about your own identity. This means that without shame, people feel free to harm others emotionally and physically without any acknowledgement of their own rights, i.e. things like their ability to live without fear of harassment or even needing to go through negative unnecessary emotions in the first place. This harms other people's dignity. Look at dignity itself. I think dignity is basically the acknowledgement of your own internal worth, i.e. you have worth in the way that you are a person, you have a living person, you are conscious, you can process emotions, etc. The whole point of dignity is the idea that your feelings matter, your emotions matter, people should avoid unnecessarily hurting you because that is inherently incorrect based on your identity as a person. Shame itself involves the concept of knowing that harming others means degrading someone else. Without shame, however, people's dignity is trampled because nobody feels compelled to suppress these kinds of behaviors that degrade others. I think this is the most likely world that occurs under government. Yes?
Yeah, but in our side of world, morality still exists, which means that people still be taught what is good, what is bad. But I think dignity is quite symmetric in both worlds.
No, that is untrue. I'll be extending onto why your external enforcement of morality is actually ineffective. What happens therefore on the Gov world? In Gov's best case scenario, without shame, morality becomes external in the way that people act out of distorted self-preservation, meaning they follow rules and social norms only when they're being watched. I.e., this looks like things like social justice system that they try to claim on opening Gov, i.e. things that rely on punishments, rewards, surveillance, etc. Your things like reputation seek your own survival within the community, and removing shame under Gov's worst case scenario erases that mechanism because behavior becomes more impulsive, becomes more short-term, unaccountable, etc. Generally, it's because there's no self-correcting mechanism under government because impulses to do bad things, for example, litter, swear at other people, target other people automatically on social media, etc., all rely on your internal self-regulating mechanism before you click post. This means that basically, the most important idea of having a self-regulator basically prevents other forms of impulses from being affected in the first place. This means that other existing checks and balances, for example, being publicly scrutinized, being punished, are mostly too slow to prevent harm from happening, or just don't hold the value without shame. This looks like public scrutiny not holding mental impact without feeling shame or embarrassed. This sort of being punished seeming unimportant without the shame of being locked up. Under government, impulses are not even reflected as are seen as small mistakes, not extreme moral issues. We see this clearly with the example of how people don't cheat on exams, even when they can technically get away with it, because the whole idea of cheating in the first place feels disgusting and embarrassing, making people feel averted towards cheating. As a result, when you remove the amount of shame, you remove the internal reason to not cheat, which makes morality depend entirely on external enforcement. We think that this, as a result, probably means that any best case scenario under government, where they do have external enforcement of morality and things, probably cannot outweigh our benefits because shame itself is an internal regulator that can arrive far faster than any form of external checks and balances can do at the end of the day. Now let's do weigh against the other houses. First, onto generally, principally we do prove that it is inherently wrong to not have shame. This outweighs all tangible benefits that the other houses can provide. We tell you that this is because people are intrinsically important, they deserve dignity, the acknowledgement that their values matter. Without shame, you violate all of that. You do not have any form of acknowledgement to other people's values as an intrinsic person. You probably don't acknowledge that whatsoever. You just generally don't preserve dignity. Against our opening, we provided you the link that tells you why people are likely to not self-regulate in the first place with shame, which is something I do assert. I think that this basically means that their impacts depend upon our analysis. Against opening government, I think opening government's main idea is basically based on external regulation, i.e. things like morality, or things like, for example, checks and balances within the systematic checks and balances. We already told you within our analysis as to why internal self-regulation, i.e. shaming itself, is probably way more effective and way more intrinsically stopping the harm in the first place, stopping all impulses you have in the first place to probably even want to commit harm in the first place. This probably means that we can actually completely destroy their impacts because we are far more time frame on a time frame level. We're far more quicker than they are. I think that at the end of the day, please oppose. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Speaker, for that speech. To wrap up the Gov bench, I'd like to invite the Gov whip here.
Am I audible?
You are, yep.
Okay, yeah, I'll start my speech. I'm gonna set my timer. Okay, starting my speech. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think when OG is assertive on the basis of their argument by simply saying having more confidence or don't care about what other people say, I think CG has a big contribution in filling in the premise of the counterfactual of following your inner voice of what is right or wrong or what you don't want. Note that societal shame's right and wrong is decided by the majority, historically, as my first speaker explained. This makes minorities suffer. For example, there is a social shame that is saying it is shameful not to get married or have children as a woman. And if this sort of social shame exists, there are females who want to prioritize their careers and want to stay single. And there's two sorts of harms, like one, pressure and mental stress from others that is saying that you are not a capable woman because you do not have a family and you are just isolated. And secondly, you are going to be labeled as an iron lady or someone who is not empathetic. And I think that is going to hinder your career promotions as well. And I think that these females are disadvantaged within the society when these social shames exist. And secondly, I think we are going to explain why societal shame is ineffective in preventing, wrongdoings of the majority of what CO said. I'll explain this later. So the impact here is that our counterfactual uniquely solves things that are simply societal shame can't, like minority following their own heart. Responding in the order of CG and then OG and some comparison again. Oh wait, CG, OO, and OG. Okay, CG. So they said that majority can no longer feel empathy and they or shame and would have more harm. Yes, in your world, societal shame is not enough. But however, in your world, societal shame is not enough to prevent majority from doing the wrongdoings. There are some cases where people can slip away. I'll explain why societal shame is not effective or weak in deterrence. First, there are 3 reasons. Firstly, it is based on the criticism from others. So people think it is good as long as you don't get found out or you can conceal the wrongdoings of what you do, such as like polluting, things like throwing plastic on the ground when no one is looking, or like cheating in relationships. You don't need to be criticized when the fact that you cheated is concealed, or like cyberbullying, where your account is anonymous. All these sorts of things can be slipped away from the societal shame check and balance. And secondly, there's high status people who is unlikely to get criticism or at least has a backup so they do not really care about societal shame. So like, for example, superiors in offices and workplaces, they're likely to push their work to subordinates and do like harassment. And I think the check and balance only function in like white corporations, like high paying and famous corporations. But like, how about shady and black corporations, like small business that are low paying and are not as famous? So these corporations don't really need to care about reputation of their workplaces. So there's unlikely to have a lot of incentive for these people to care about criticism because it's just a very bad environment. So in these situations, vulnerable subordinates are not saved in this poor work environment. And even if criticism happens in these cases, rich people have backups so they can get away. They could just go to other offices or and this would lead to not much of a big damage. And it's not like a true reflection on your mistakes because you're not truly punished. And you will repeat this again because you don't truly reflect on yourself and think that you are sorry. You are only caring about the societal shame, and you aren't able to fundamentally know that you are wrong in the place. And thirdly, I think blaming would happen when there is no true reflection which is connected to my second reasoning. Okay, they also said that they weighed that initially like inherently wrong to not have like shame. I think it's better that humans' actions are based on morality rather than like the incorrect and ineffective societal shame that I said. In this case, minority have more power to be able to follow their own hearts, and I think that there would be the cases of like that societal shame failed to would be able to have some sort of effect. Moving on to OO, I think that they said that they would internalize how like at a young age why this is so shameful. And I think this is not effective because if you could still do your wrongdoings if you can still conceal your secrets. I think young children tend to lie to teachers and say, I didn't do that, but I think that likely to be able to internalize and actually feel reflection when they're only caring about shame. And I also think that they said that they can prevent crimes where people make noise at midnight. I think there's no uniqueness even with societal shame. Some people will do this because one, they know that they won't get arrested even if they make noise, and secondly, those individuals are irrational and often drunk at midnight. So I think there are a lot of external factors that make them do some wrongdoings, and that is uncontrollable. And I think that it would decrease their sense of like rationality and think, oh wait, maybe the thing that I'm doing is shameful. I think there are situations where they can't be aware of themselves. Yeah. They also had an weighed that the negative motivation is bigger than the positive motivation. I'm sorry for using your example. You said that you wanted to get into Tokyo University, but there was a negative motivation saying that people laughed at you. As a result, you listened to your own heart and succeeded into getting into your university. So that means your positive motivation was bigger and actually was successful and effective than the negative motivation. So I think this example cannot be applied and rather can be flipped. And I think they explained about like laughing in the movie theater and can be prevented. Yeah, in these cases, I don't think that is likely to be prevented. Even if you do feel shame, it isn't unstoppable because one, you are in some cases irrational and can't be aware of your surroundings when you are having a lot of fun, especially when you are with your friends. And secondly, it may be like you may be aware that making a noise in the movie theater is shameful. You don't want to be you have an incentive to feel that you want to appeal funny and humorous to your peers and friends. So there are external factors that make you overstep your societal shame mechanism. And I think thirdly, it's also not punishable, so it's not very a serious thing to commit. So some people would think it's okay to be noisy in the movie theater. Yeah, moving on to the wing against OG. Oh wait, I think O also said that moving on to the wing against OG. They said that it's better for self-development and we have more the minorities have more power and chance. I think just the fact that you don't feel societal shame does not immediately mean criticism towards minority will disappear. So their argument is assertive and just based on the fact that they have more confidence. I think we as CG was able to say that why these minorities would have confidence and why they would follow their internal voices and yeah, proud to propose.
Thanks, speaker, for that speech. To wrap up the op bench and the debate as a whole, I invite the op web speaker.
Am I audible?
You are, yeah.
Okay. So, sorry about that. My throat is like kind of dying, but yeah. If everyone's ready, my speech will start. We're not defending, for example, bullying or like people ganging up on someone just because they look different or because they're like racially a minority, right? When we talk about the shame, we are defending something like much more like ordinary and much more frequent, right? The uncomfortable moment when you realize that you messed up something and you wish you could act better or act earlier or something like that, right? So it's internal, it's private, and most importantly, it's self-generated, right? No one forced you to get shame. So government keeps treating shame as like, oh, something people do to you, but shame is usually what you do to yourself after you reflect, right? And this distinction matters, right? Because the real question, therefore, in this debate is, do we want a world where people never feel bad for doing harm, or a world where people actually can recognize their mistakes and care enough for change, right? And George, note that CG is basically OG's like basically OG with like different wording, right? The whole case, they both assume that, oh, removing shame magically boosts the minority confidence, so I don't need to rebut two separate cases. I just need to refute the single and unproven assumption. Now moving on to my first clash, right? What shame actually is and how government misdefines it, right? Because OG keeps saying that shame happens because you don't belong in this community or like society criticizes you, right? They think that shame is about being different. However, this is not how shame works, right? Because shame is tied to your own understanding of what is right and wrong, right? You like apologize to a friend because you feel bad about like lying or like doing something bad to him, right? Not because the whole school told you that like, oh, you're such a bad person, you're wrong, right? Which is internal shame, right? And DBM even said that, oh, guilt continues to exist under their world, right? Which means shame still exists, right? Because guilty is just a different form of shame, right? Guilty is shame when you did something like wrong, right? Because it's just like with a specific reasoning attached, right? So when people still feel guilty after doing something harmful, then nothing about government's model actually removes the emotional feedback, all called shame, right? They literally just rename shame to guilty, and they say, oh, we remove guilty, right? Which is simply untrue. Because every time the government tries to explain their emotional system, right, they kind of like secretly smuggle back shame back into the role with the another name, right? For example, like sympathy or like feeling bad, but those are actually literally shame, right? They can't just get away with the judge. And we told that, yes, we still don't defend like identity-based shaming, right? We defend those behavior-based shame. We defend those moment when someone think that, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done something better. I should have something like different, right? So we tell you that government never answers why that should disappear. Go ahead. POI.
I think you're talking about shame itself, but I think in the debate, I think it's about social shame, about criticism from other people. So, yeah. Ooh.
Well, the motions is where individuals do not feel shame. So I don't get why this is specifically important to debate. Okay, moving ahead, right? OGs is a role where without shame give minority confidence to speak in themselves, right? That sounds nice, right? But they're not only giving the minorities this chance to like not speak out, right? But because everyone is equally shameless, right? This means that the majority can still like shamelessly criticize and like bully minority without feeling bad, right? Which means they will like cause mental trauma, and those things are like not just limited to shame, right? And like the Deputy Prime Minister literally gave us like the best opposite argument, right? Because they describe like a super evil criminal who like gets away with everything because like he does something bad, he doesn't care about criticism, right? However, in their world, everyone becomes that super evil dude, right? Because no one cares about criticism anymore. And we tell you that if you insult someone and you feel nothing, right? If you target someone different from you and your emotions stay blank, if you don't feel bad about anything, and like we tell you that nothing will ever stop you, right? Which means this is dangerous minorities and this is not safe. Because right now, shame is one of like the few emotional breaks like majority people have when they harm a vulnerable group, right? If you like spit like swear words to them, if you call them like racially bad words, then obviously you will have this feeling or you'll feel bad, right? You'll feel like empathy towards them, right? Even if law exists, right? Like we tell you that like there are a lot of things you can get away without law. If you like swear to someone, then obviously the law won't care about you, right? If you like cheat on someone, the law won't care about you. There's a lot of things you can get away without law, right? And we tell the DPM also try to say, oh, sympathy and regret still exist, right? But it's the same thing. This is simply renamed the word shame into other things, right? They can't explain why anyone would feel like sympathetic without shame, right? Because sympathy is literally like rooted in the feeling that like, oh, I don't want someone to feel pain because of me, which is simply shame, right? And the government keeps telling us, oh, minorities won't be judged anymore, right? But judgment isn't disappearing, right? Only the internal reaction to harm disappear, right? Which means the majorities will still criticize or even criticize more, right? Because there's no like internal regulation that starts them from doing so, and they will still stereotype them, they'll still misunderstand those minorities, nothing will change, right? Which means it simply just creates shameless aggressors, which the minorities are harmed even more, right? And third clash, right? The O say like, oh, um, shame stop people from like trying new things in a world without shame means like people are more confident. Oh, OG said that, right? But sure, people might take more risks, right? But trying more things doesn't mean learning more things, right? You can try like 50 sports, doesn't mean you're good at any one of them, right? We tell the growth only happens when you understand something went wrong and when you feel like changing, right? When you feel something bad, when you cheat, you feel bad, right? That means you don't want to feel this bad feeling anymore and you change it, right? Which is called shame, right? DPM try to say that, oh, people have many feelings, not limited to shame, right? And people will criticize others anyway, so like shame is unnecessary. But we tell that criticism without any internal emotional reaction is simply meaningless, right? I can like criticize you 1,000 points, like, oh, you're so ugly, you're so dumb, like everything. But if you don't care about it, then we don't think it really matters, right? Because if you never feel anything, you don't change, right? And the government side keep talking about like, oh, you can logically reflect, right? But they never explain why a person will like stop and analyze the behavior if that behavior doesn't even feel bad anyways, right? Because that means that like if you keep like for example criticizing anyone, you don't have any like regulations on yourself. Why will you criticize? Why will you like analyze? Oh, why oh, I did this something really bad, right? That's because you'll never know which mistakes matter because you don't feel bad about your mistakes, right? Yes, so like we tell you that criticism isn't inherently harmful anyways because shame doesn't break you, right? It motivates you to grow past where you're now, right? If you cheat and you feel bad, that tells you to not cheat, and that's actually inherently improvement, not a bad thing, right? Now let's do some final weighing, right? Because the premise is simply wrong. Because we thought the shame is not social criticism, right? Social criticism is something else. It's like bullying. It's like cyberbullying, right? We tell you that high status people also they care more about shame than others, right? Because depend on those intangible things. For example, reputation, social status, as their identity is much more dependent on those things, which means they're actually more responsive to shame compared to others, right? And also, government actually imagines a world where nobody feels bad, right? They never explain why anyone will reflect or change without that emotional push, right? If you don't feel bad about this, if you don't think you did anything wrong in the first place, we say there's no incentive for you to reflect, right? And also the opening opposition by our house, they say that shame help people follow social norms. Like, yes, that's true, right? But that's precisely why our argument matters as well, right? Because they only talk about those compliance with norms. Like, however, we talked about why there's moral engine, what there's this moral engine behind it. We talked about much more impact, much more way why this in long term will benefit the whole society as a whole, right? So, Judge, we tell you a world without shame is simply careless and very dangerous. And Judge, for reflection for real human development, you should vote for opposition. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Speaker, for that speech, and all speakers for respective speeches. This is going to mark the end of the rookie final. Congrats, everyone.